Dr. Amy Rodriguez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stared at the data streaming across her monitor. The research station New Horizon had been her home for the past 3 years, floating in the cold vacuum around Europa like a metal island. She loved the work, but sometimes the endless white walls and recycled air made her feel trapped. "Amy, you need to see this," called Ryan Clark from across the lab. The young engineer was hunched over his workstation, his fingers dancing across the holographic display. "The electromagnetic readings from Jupiter are off the charts." Amy pushed herself away from her desk and floated over to Ryan's station. In the low-gravity section of the station, walking was more like controlled bouncing. She grabbed the handrail next to Ryan and looked at his screen. The numbers were indeed strange. "When did this start?" she asked. "About 20 minutes ago. At first I thought it was equipment failure, but all our sensors are showing the same thing." Dr. Lisa Park entered the lab through the main airlock, still wearing her environmental suit from her morning sample collection outside the station. She pulled off her helmet and shook out her long brown hair. "Did anyone else feel that vibration about an hour ago?" It was subtle, but definitely there. Amy and Ryan looked at each other. They had been so focused on their work they hadn't noticed. "Anything unusual? What kind of vibration?" Amy asked. "Hard to describe? Like someone plucked a guitar string, but the string was the entire station." Commander Jake Morrison's voice crackled through the intercom system. "All department heads to the bridge immediately. We have a situation." Amy felt her stomach tighten. Jake was former military and never called emergency meetings unless something was seriously wrong. She pushed off from Ryan's workstation and headed for the corridor. Lisa and Ryan followed close behind. The bridge was the nerve center of New Horizon, located at the station's center where the artificial gravity was strongest. When Amy arrived, she found Jake staring at a wall of monitors displaying various system reports. His expression was grim. "What's the problem, Jake?" Amy asked. "We've lost contact with Earth," Jake said without turning around. "Complete communication blackout. No radio, no quantum entanglement channels, nothing." Lisa moved to one of the communication stations and began checking the equipment. "All our hardware looks functional. The problem must be external." "That's what I thought too," Jake said. "Until this happened." He pointed to the main display screen. Instead of showing the usual star field and Jupiter's massive bulk, the screen was completely black. Amy felt a chill run down her spine. "Are the external cameras malfunctioning?" she asked. "I wish it was that simple." Jake's voice was tight. "Ryan, can you explain what your sensors detected?" Ryan moved to the science station and pulled up his data. "About 90 minutes ago, we detected a massive electromagnetic pulse originating from somewhere beyond the asteroid belt. The energy signature was unlike anything in our databases." "How massive?" Amy asked. "Big enough to fry every piece of electronic equipment in the solar system." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Amy looked around the bridge at the various monitors and displays, all still functioning normally. "But our equipment is still working. For now," Jake said. "But look at this." He activated a diagnostic program that showed the station's power grid. Amy could see that their main fusion reactor was operating at only 60% capacity, and the number was slowly dropping. "The pulse didn't destroy our electronics outright," Jake explained, "but it damaged them in ways we don't fully understand. Everything is slowly degrading." Lisa looked up from her communication console. "I can't reach any of the other research stations. Mars Base Alpha, the mining operations in the asteroid belt, even the automated beacons. It's like they've all vanished." Amy tried to process what this meant. If the electromagnetic pulse had affected the entire solar system, then billions of people on Earth, Mars, and dozens of space installations were facing the same crisis. Without technology, most of them would die within days. "How long do we have?" she asked. Jake consulted his diagnostic display. "If the degradation continues at this rate, we'll lose life support in approximately 72 hours, maybe less." "And there's no way to repair the damage?" "Not with our current resources. The pulse seems to have affected systems at the quantum level. It's like every circuit in our equipment is slowly forgetting how to work. Ryan was frantically checking his instruments when he suddenly stopped. Wait, there's something else. The pulse didn't originate from a natural source. The energy pattern is too precise, too controlled. What are you saying? Amy asked, though she was afraid she already knew the answer. Someone did this deliberately. This was an attack. The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the life support systems. Amy had always known that humanity's expansion into space would eventually bring them into contact with hostile alien species, but she had imagined it would happen differently. She had pictured great battles between fleets of starships, not a silent attack that disabled their technology without warning. Any ideas who might have done this? Jake asked. Lisa pulled up the xenobiology database on her workstation. The Galactic Federation includes dozens of species, but most of them are peaceful. There are a few militant races, but none with technology advanced enough for something like this. The Zirathi, Ryan said quietly. It has to be them. Amy knew about the Zirathi from intelligence reports. They were a warlike species that had been expanding aggressively through their sector of the galaxy. Humanity had never made direct contact with them. The Federation intelligence suggested they viewed other species as either subjects to be conquered or obstacles to be eliminated. If it is the Zirathi, Jake said, then this pulse was probably just the opening move. They'll be coming. As if summoned by his words, the station's proximity alarms began blaring. Jake rushed to the sensor station and his face went pale. Multiple contacts approaching from the direction of the asteroid belt. Large ships moving fast. Amy watched the tactical display as dozens of red dots appeared on the screen, heading directly for New Horizon. The ships were massive, easily 10 times the size of any human vessel. How long until they reach us? She asked. 40 minutes, maybe less. Options? Jake shook his head. We have no weapons that could damage ships that size, and our engines are too damaged to run. We're sitting ducks. The next 30 minutes passed. Intense preparation. Jake armed the few personal weapons available on the station and set up defensive positions throughout the corridors. Amy and her team tried desperately to restore critical systems, but the degradation was accelerating. One by one, the station's lights began failing. This is it, Jake announced over the intercom. Enemy boarding craft detected. They'll be docking in 5 minutes. All personnel to defensive positions. Amy found herself crouched in a maintenance corridor with Lisa and Ryan, holding an old-fashioned projectile weapon that Jake had retrieved from the station's emergency supplies. The corridor was almost completely dark now, lit only by a few flickering emergency lights. I can't believe this is happening, Lisa whispered. Through the station's hull, they could hear the metallic clang of docking clamps engaging. The aliens were here, then something unexpected happened. The emergency lights died completely, plunging the corridor into absolute darkness. But instead of the sounds of alien troops storming through the station, Amy heard something else entirely. Screaming. High-pitched, terrified screaming coming from the direction of the airlocks, and the screaming wasn't human. The screaming continued for several minutes before gradually fading into silence. Amy pressed herself against the cold metal wall of the maintenance corridor, her heart pounding so hard she was sure the aliens would hear it. Next to her, Lisa and Ryan were barely breathing, all three of them straining to understand what was happening. That wasn't human screaming, Ryan whispered, his voice so quiet Amy could barely hear him. No, she agreed. That was definitely not human. Jake's voice came through their personal communicators, barely audible through the static caused by the failing electronics. All teams report. What's your status? Amy keyed her communicator. Amy here. We're in maintenance corridor 7. No contact with hostiles yet, but we heard screaming from the direction of airlock 3. Same here, came another voice. This is Johnson in cargo bay 2. Lots of screaming, but no actual aliens. Jake's confusion was clear even through the static. Stand by all teams. I'm moving to investigate airlock 1. Amy waited in the darkness, gripping her weapon tightly. The station was almost completely silent now, except for the distant hum of the failing life support systems. Even that was getting quieter as the electromagnetic damage continued to spread through their equipment. "I'm going to try something," Lisa whispered. She reached into her equipment bag and pulled out a small device that looked like an old-fashioned telescope. Night vision scope from the museum section. Battery-powered, not connected to any digital systems. She extended the scope and peered down the corridor toward the main hub of the station. After a few seconds she gasped. "What is it?" Amy asked. "There are aliens in the main corridor, but they're not moving like soldiers. They're huddled together near the emergency lighting, and they look terrified." Amy took the scope and looked. For herself. Through the green-tinted view, she could see several tall figures clustered around the only working emergency light in the main hub. The aliens were easily 7 feet tall with elongated limbs and what appeared to be scaled skin. They were carrying weapons that looked far more advanced than anything humans had ever built, but they weren't using them. Instead, they were pressed together in a tight group, their heads constantly turning to scan the dark areas around them. "They're afraid of the dark," Amy realized. "That's why they screamed when the lights went out." Ryan took the scope and observed the aliens for several minutes. "Look at their behavior patterns. Every time that emergency light flickers, they panic. And see how they won't step away from the light source. It's like they're physically incapable of entering dark areas." Jake's voice crackled through their communicators again. "I've reached airlock 1. The alien boarding craft is still attached, but there's no one inside. Wait, I can see equipment scattered around like they dropped everything and ran." Amy felt a surge of hope. If the aliens were afraid of darkness, then humanity might actually have a chance. "Jake, can you get to the main power controls?" "Negative. The route takes me through several dark sections, and I can see aliens blocking the way." But here's the interesting part. They're not trying to advance either. They're just sitting there, clustered around any light source they can find. Lisa was examining the alien weapons through the night vision scope. Those energy weapons they're carrying look incredibly sophisticated. If they used them, they could cut through our hull like paper. But they're not even trying to fight. Amy thought about what she knew of human psychology and applied it to what they were observing. If darkness triggers a panic response in their species, then they're probably not thinking clearly right now. They're operating on pure instinct, and that instinct is telling them to stay in the light at all costs. "Which means we can move freely in the dark areas," Ryan said. "We need to tell Jake." Amy keyed her communicator. "Jake, it looks like the aliens have a psychological weakness. They seem to be terrified of darkness. As long as we stay in the unlit areas, we might be able to move around them." "Are you sure about this?" "Pretty sure. We've been observing them for 20 minutes, and they haven't moved more than a few feet from any light source." There was a long pause before Jake responded. "All right, I'm going to test that theory. If you don't hear from me in 10 minutes, assume I was wrong." Amy, Lisa, and Ryan waited tensely in their dark corridor. Through the night vision scope, they could see the aliens in the main hub still clustered around their emergency light. Every few minutes, one of them would make a small movement toward the darkness, but would quickly retreat back to the group. 8 minutes later, Jake's voice came through their communicators, much clearer than before. "You were right, I was able to move right past them as long as I stayed in the shadows. They can see me when I'm in the light, but they won't follow me into dark areas. I'm at the main power controls now. Can you restore the lighting? That's the problem. The electromagnetic pulse damaged our power grid too severely. Even if I could restore main power, the lights would probably just fail again within a few minutes." Amy considered their options. The aliens were clearly more advanced than humans, but they had a critical weakness that their technology couldn't overcome. If humanity could exploit that weakness, they might be able to turn the tables on their would-be conquerors. "Jake, instead of trying to restore our lights, what if we focus on eliminating the remaining emergency lighting? If we can plunge the entire station into complete darkness, the aliens might retreat to their ships. That's risky. We need some light to operate our own equipment. We have chemical light sticks in the emergency supplies," Lisa said. They're not electronic, so the electromagnetic pulse wouldn't have affected them. We could use those for essential operations. Ryan was studying the aliens through the night vision scope when he noticed something new. There are more of them coming through the airlock, but they're moving very slowly. It looks like they're setting up some kind of portable lighting equipment. Amy took the scope and saw that Ryan was right. The new aliens were carrying devices that projected bright beams of light, creating corridors of illumination through the station. They were methodically expanding their lighted areas, probably trying to establish a secure foothold. They're adapting, she said. We need to act before they figure out how to work around their fear. Jake's voice came through the communicator again. I'm going to start shutting down the emergency lighting systems manually. Once I do that, you'll need to move fast. Get to the chemical supplies and grab as many light sticks as you can carry. Understood. Amy waited until Jake gave the signal, then began moving through the dark corridors with Lisa and Ryan close behind. Using the night vision scope, she could navigate around the aliens who were still huddled around their light sources. She could hear them making strange clicking sounds that might have been their language, and the sounds were definitely expressing distress. When they reached the emergency supply room, Amy quickly gathered several dozen chemical light sticks while Lisa collected other useful equipment. Ryan kept watch with the night vision scope, reporting on alien movements. They're starting to panic, he reported. Jake must be shutting down more lighting systems. Some of them are heading back toward their ship. Amy felt a grim satisfaction. For the first time since the attack began, humans were gaining an advantage. They had found the enemy's weakness, and they were going to exploit it. As they prepared to move to their next objective, Amy realized that this was just the beginning. If one ship full of aliens could be defeated by simple darkness, then maybe humanity could survive this invasion after all. They just needed to think like humans instead of trying to match alien technology with human technology. Time to show? These aliens, what happens when they pick a fight with a species that evolved in caves, she whispered to herself. The message took 18 hours to reach Mars Base Alpha using the old emergency radio system that Jake had managed to repair. Commander Beth Turner was checking water recycling systems when the crackling transmission came through the ancient speakers in the communications room. Mars Base Alpha, this is New Horizon Station. Priority message. Alien invasion force has critical weakness. They cannot function in darkness. Repeat, hostiles retreat when lighting is eliminated. Beth dropped her diagnostic tablet and rushed to the radio console. She had been trying to contact other human installations for 2 days since the electromagnetic pulse had disabled their main communication systems. This was the first message she had received from anywhere. New Horizon, this is Commander Turner at Mars Base Alpha. Please repeat your message and provide details. Amy's voice came through the static, tired but determined. Beth, we've had direct contact with alien boarding parties. They appear to have an extreme psychological fear of darkness. When we eliminated our emergency lighting, they retreated to their ships. We think this might be a species-wide weakness. Beth felt her heart racing. Mars Base Alpha had been tracking alien ships approaching the Red Planet for the past 6 hours. She had been preparing for a hopeless last stand, but if Amy was right, they might actually have a chance. How certain are you about this weakness? Beth asked. Very certain. We've observed their behavior for over 20 hours. They physically cannot enter dark areas without extreme distress. They're setting up massive lighting installations around their ships just to maintain operational zones. Any idea why they have this weakness? Lisa thinks they evolved on a planet with constant light. Maybe a binary star system where there's never true darkness. Their fear response is probably hardwired into their genetics. Beth looked out the observation window at the Martian landscape. The base was built into a canyon wall, with most of the installation underground for protection from radiation. If the aliens were afraid of darkness, then Mars Base Alpha was perfectly positioned to take advantage of that weakness. New Horizon, we have alien ships approaching Mars. Can you provide tactical recommendations? Eliminate all external lighting. Force them to bring their own light sources, then target those sources. They seem unable to function effectively without constant illumination. Beth spent the next 4 hours coordinating with her team of 60 personnel. Unlike New Horizon, Mars Base Alpha was primarily a military installation with extensive defensive capabilities. The base had been built during the early expansion period when humanity was still worried about hostile alien contact. Dr. Alex Chun, the base physicist, was working frantically to understand the electromagnetic pulse weapon that had disabled their advanced systems. "I think I can create a localized version of the pulse effect," he told Beth during an emergency briefing. "If we can target their lighting systems specifically, we might be able to create dark zones around their ships." "How long do you need?" Beth asked. "Give me 12 hours and access to the old electronics workshop. I'll need to build everything using pre-digital components. You have whatever you need." Colonel Sam Foster had been monitoring radio transmissions from Earth using equipment that survived the pulse. "I'm picking up scattered reports from around the solar system," he reported. "Similar alien ships are attacking installations on Europa, Titan, and the asteroid mining stations. But here's the interesting part. Every human group that has reported success against the aliens mentions using darkness as a weapon." Beth realized they were seeing the pattern of a much larger invasion. The aliens had probably planned to disable human technology and then systematically occupy every human installation in the solar system. But they hadn't counted on their own psychological weakness being discovered so quickly. "Sam, can you establish contact with Earth's military command? I've been trying for hours. Most of their communication systems are down, but I did manage to reach a ham radio operator in North America. He says there are alien ships in orbit around Earth, but they're maintaining high-altitude positions and flooding the surface with artificial light. They're trying to eliminate darkness on a planetary scale," Beth said. "That confirms Amy's theory about their weakness." Maria Santos entered the briefing room carrying a pack full of specialized equipment. She was the base's reconnaissance specialist, trained for operations in hostile environments. "Commander, I've been thinking about Amy's report. If these aliens can't handle darkness, then someone needs to get close to their ships and gather intelligence." "That's extremely dangerous, Maria. Less dangerous than fighting them conventionally. From what Amy described, as long as I stay in the shadows, they probably won't even try to follow me." Beth considered the proposal. They needed more information about alien capabilities and intentions, and Maria was the best qualified person for the job. "What's your plan?" "Their ships are landing about 5 kilometers from our main entrance. I can approach using the canyon system, which will keep me in shadow most of the way. If I can get close enough, I might be able to determine their next move." "Approved, but you take no unnecessary risks. If the situation looks bad, you retreat immediately." Maria left the base 2 hours before the alien ships were scheduled to arrive. She carried only basic equipment that would function without electronics, night vision goggles, a chemical light stick for emergencies, and an old-fashioned camera with actual film. From her position in the canyon shadows, Maria watched 3 enormous alien ships descend toward the Martian surface. Each ship was easily the size of a city block, with strange organic curves that suggested biotechnology rather than metal construction. As soon as they landed, the ships began projecting massive beams of light in all directions, creating a zone of artificial daylight around their landing site. Through her binoculars, Maria could see hundreds of alien figures moving around the ships. They were tall and thin, like Amy had described, but from this distance she could see more details. Their skin had a metallic sheen that reflected light, and they moved with quick, nervous gestures, constantly looking toward any area not illuminated by their light projectors. What really caught her attention was the massive construction activity taking place around the ships. The aliens were building some kind of installation using materials they had brought with them. The structure looked like a giant light tower, designed to project illumination over a much wider area than their ship-based systems. Maria took dozens of photographs of the construction process, trying to understand what the aliens were planning. After several hours of observation, the pattern became clear. They were building permanent lighting installations that would eliminate darkness across large areas of the Martian surface. "They're not just invading," she whispered to herself. "They're terraforming the light conditions." As she prepared to return to base with her intelligence, Maria noticed something that made her blood run cold. Similar construction was taking place at sites scattered across the visible horizon. The aliens weren't just building one light installation, they were building dozens of them, probably planning to cover the entire planet with artificial daylight. If they succeeded, they would eliminate their own weakness and make human resistance almost impossible. Maria realized that humanity had a very limited window of opportunity to exploit the alien weakness before it became irrelevant. She began the careful journey back to Mars Base Alpha, moving from shadow to shadow while alien patrols searched the illuminated areas. The aliens had sophisticated equipment and superior numbers, but they couldn't search areas they were afraid to enter. When Maria finally reached the base, she found Beth waiting anxiously in the communications room. Dr. Chun had successfully completed his electromagnetic pulse device, and Colonel Foster had established contact with human resistance groups throughout the solar system. "What did you learn?" Beth asked immediately. "Bad news and worse news," Maria replied, pulling out her camera. "The bad news is they're building permanent light installations across the planet. The worse news is they're doing it everywhere else." 2. Beth studied the photographs Maria had taken. "How long do we have?" "Based on their construction rate, maybe 2 weeks before they complete their light grid. After that, our advantage disappears. Then we need to coordinate with every human group in the solar system," Beth said. "If we're going to stop this invasion, it has to be now, while darkness is still our ally." Beth looked at the faces of her team, seeing the same determination she felt. The aliens might have superior technology, but they had made one critical mistake. They had attacked a species that had learned to survive in the dark long before they had learned to build machines. "Time to remind the galaxy why humans are dangerous," she said. Engineer Kate Walsh crawled through the abandoned subway tunnel beneath New York City, her headlamp casting strange shadows on the cracked concrete walls. Behind her, a team of 12 volunteers followed in single file, each carrying pieces of equipment they had salvaged from the ruins above. The aliens had been bombarding Earth's surface with light for 6 days now, but the old underground systems remained dark and safe. "How much further?" whispered Dr. Peter Stone, the theoretical physicist who had designed their desperate plan. His voice echoed strangely in the tunnel. 2 more kilometers," Kate replied quietly. "The old subway maintenance facility should be perfect for what we need." Above them, the city was transformed into something unrecognizable. Massive alien light projectors had turned night into an artificial day that never ended. The few humans who remained on the surface moved like ghosts through streets that blazed with harsh white illumination. Most had retreated underground into basements, sewers, and subway tunnels that the aliens seemed unable or unwilling to enter. Kate had been working in the subway tunnels for 4 days, coordinating with similar teams in cities around the world. The plan was simple in concept but incredibly difficult to execute. They were going to build a device that could generate an electromagnetic pulse powerful enough to disable every piece of alien technology in the solar system, including their own. The catch was that it had to be built entirely with pre-digital components and powered by methods the aliens couldn't detect. The mathematics work, Peter had explained during their first planning meeting in an abandoned subway station. "If we can create a resonance cascade effect using the alien technology we've recovered, we can amplify our pulse to planetary scale. But the timing has to be perfect across multiple locations." Kate reached the maintenance facility and pushed open the heavy metal door. The room beyond was exactly what they needed, large enough for their equipment but completely hidden from alien sensors. She set down her pack and began unpacking the components they had been gathering for days. Captain Tony Garcia emerged from the darkness, having arrived earlier with his team through a different tunnel route. "Perimeter is secure," he reported. "I've got lookouts posted at every access point." If the aliens somehow find us, we'll have at least 10 minutes warning. That should be enough time to evacuate the critical components, Kate said. How are the other teams doing? Tony consulted a handwritten list illuminated by a small chemical light. London team is ahead of schedule. They found an old bomb shelter that's perfect for their assembly work. Tokyo team is having supply problems, but they think they can improvise. Moscow team went completely dark yesterday, but that might actually be good news. It probably means they're staying hidden. Dr. Amy Rodriguez's voice crackled through their primitive radio system. She was still aboard New Horizons Station, coordinating the overall effort. All teams, this is Amy. We've received intelligence from Mars Base Alpha that the aliens are accelerating their construction schedule. Maria Santos managed to infiltrate one of their sites and discovered they're planning to activate their planetary light grids in 8 days instead of the 2 weeks we originally estimated. Kate felt her stomach drop. 8 days was barely enough time to complete construction, let alone coordinate the simultaneous activation required for their plan to work. Amy, are you certain about that timeline? Confirmed? Maria took photographs of their construction schedule displays. The symbols were alien, but the mathematical progressions were clear enough for our computers to analyze before they failed. Peter was already recalculating their construction timeline on a piece of paper, using an old mechanical calculator he had found in a museum. 8 days is possible, but we'll have to work around the clock and eliminate all safety margins. What kind of safety margins? Kate asked, though she was afraid of the answer. The original plan called for extensive testing of each component before assembly. We won't have time for that now. We'll be building everything blind and hoping it works when we activate it. Tony looked grim. What happens if it doesn't work? Then the aliens complete their light grids and humanity loses its only advantage. Amy's voice said through the radio. After that, resistance becomes almost impossible. Kate began organizing the components they had gathered. Most were pieces of alien technology that had been abandoned when the creatures retreated from dark areas. Some were old human electronics that had survived the initial electromagnetic pulse. Others were completely improvised devices built from scavenged materials. The theory is sound, Peter said, assembling what looked like a complex antenna array. Alien technology operates on quantum frequencies we've never seen before. If we can create a feedback loop in their quantum field generators, the resulting pulse should cascade through their entire network and disable every piece of their technology simultaneously, Kate added, including our own. And that's the beauty of it. Once we activate the device, both sides will be reduced to primitive technology. The difference is that humans can function without advanced electronics. The aliens apparently cannot. Dr. Lisa Park's voice joined the radio conversation from her position at a relay station in the abandoned subway system. I've been analyzing the alien psychological profiles based on our observations. Their fear of darkness appears to be so severe that it overrides their tactical thinking. Even if they suspect we're planning something, they probably won't be able to search dark areas effectively enough to find us. Kate spent the next 6 hours assembling the primary resonance chamber while Peter worked on the quantum field calculations. The device was larger than she had expected, requiring most of the available space in the maintenance room. Worse, it was incredibly fragile. One wrong connection could cause a catastrophic failure that would destroy the entire facility. Kate, we have a problem, Tony said during their 3rd day of construction. My scouts report increased alien patrol activity near some of our access tunnels. They're not entering the dark areas, but they're definitely trying to monitor them from the entrances. Are they getting suspicious? Hard to say. It could be routine security improvements, or they might be detecting some kind of energy signature. From our work, Peter looked up from his calculations. That's possible. The quantum resonance effects we're generating might be detectable even at low power levels. We need to implement additional shielding. Kate surveyed their available materials. They had planned for many contingencies, but additional shielding would require components they didn't have and time they couldn't spare. What if we relocate to a deeper facility? No time, Peter said. We're too close to completion. Moving now would set us back at least 2 days. Amy's voice came through the radio again. All teams were receiving reports of alien activity around suspected human hideouts worldwide. They may not be able to enter dark areas, but they're definitely trying to smoke us out. How? Kate asked. They're sealing off access points to underground areas and pumping in artificial light through ventilation systems. Several resistance cells have been forced to abandon their positions. Kate realized their window of opportunity was closing faster than expected. If the aliens figured out how to neutralize human advantage in dark areas, the war would be over before their device was completed. Peter, what's our absolute minimum completion time? Working around the clock with no sleep and no safety testing? 36 hours? Then that's what we do. Kate keyed her radio. All teams, we're accelerating to emergency construction schedule. Forget safety protocols, forget testing, forget everything except getting these devices completed. As Kate returned to her work, she could hear the distant rumble of alien machinery somewhere above them. Time was running out, but humanity's last desperate gamble was almost ready. In 36 hours, they would discover whether human ingenuity and determination could overcome superior alien technology, or whether darkness would finally fall across the solar system forever. Admiral John Parker crouched in the darkness of the abandoned mine shaft in Colorado, watching the final countdown on his mechanical timer. 37 minutes until Operation Nightfall would begin. Around him, teams of humans waited in similar dark places across Earth, Mars, the asteroid belt, and dozens of space stations. Each group had their own part of the massive device that would either save humanity or doom it forever. Final systems check, Amy Rodriguez's voice crackled through the primitive radio network they had built over the past week. London team, report status. London ready. Device is armed and standing by for activation signal. Tokyo team ready. Moscow team ready. Mars Base Alpha ready. One by one, resistance cells around the solar system confirmed their readiness. John felt a mixture of pride and terror as he listened to the reports. Humanity had accomplished something incredible in just 8 days. Working in complete darkness, using tools their grandfathers would have recognized. They had built a weapon that could disable the most advanced technology in the galaxy. New Horizon Station ready, Amy reported from her position aboard the Research Station where this all began. All teams, remember that once we activate our devices, we'll lose all electronic communication. From that point forward, each team will be operating independently. Kate Walsh was making final adjustments to the primary resonance chamber in the New York subway facility. Quantum field generators are stable, she reported. Peter, are your calculations still holding? Dr. Peter Stone checked his mechanical instruments one more time. The mathematics work perfectly, but we've never tested anything like this before. We're essentially creating a controlled quantum cascade that will spread through alien technology faster than light. If our theory is WRO, then we'll find out together, Commander Jake Morrison interrupted from his position at New Horizon. Either way, we can't let the aliens complete their light grids. This is our only chance. Through the radio, John could hear the tension in everyone's voices. They all knew the risks. If the device failed, humanity would lose its only advantage, and the aliens would complete their conquest. If the device worked too well, it might disable technology permanently, sending human civilization back to the Stone Age. But if they did nothing, the aliens would eliminate darkness from every human world within hours. All teams. This is Amy. We're receiving reports that alien construction teams are beginning final activation procedures for their light grids. If we're going to act, it has to be now. John looked at his timer. 23 minutes until the planned activation time. Amy, do we move up the schedule? Negative. The quantum cascade requires precise timing across multiple locations. If we're off by even a few seconds, the resonance effect will fail. Maria Santos was positioned in a forward observation post, watching alien activity around their massive light installation on Mars. Command, the aliens are definitely accelerating their timeline. I can see them loading some kind of power cores into their main generators. Commander Beth Turner responded from Mars Base Alpha. How long do we have? Maybe 30 minutes before they bring their system online? John felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the cold air in the mine shaft. The timing was going to be incredibly close. If the aliens activated their light grid before the human device was ready, the window of opportunity would close forever. All teams, prepare for early activation, Amy announced. We're moving the timeline up by 15 minutes. Kate's voice came through the radio, tight with stress. Amy, we haven't finished the final calibration sequence. If we activate now, the resonance cascade might not propagate properly. If we wait for perfect calibration, there won't be anything left to save. Dr. Alex Chun joined the conversation from his position at Mars Base Alpha. I've been monitoring alien quantum signatures for the past hour. Their technology operates on frequencies we can't fully understand, but the pattern suggests they're building towards some kind of critical threshold. Once they reach it, their systems might become immune to our interference. John made the decision that would determine humanity's fate. All teams, this is Admiral Parker. We activate in 10 minutes. I don't care if the systems aren't perfect. Sometimes you have to roll the dice and hope for the best. Around the solar system, teams of humans began their final preparations. Chemical lights were extinguished. Mechanical timers were synchronized. Ancient radio transmitters were powered down to prevent electromagnetic interference. In a few minutes, humanity would be completely cut off from all modern technology, fighting an alien invasion with nothing but courage and improvised weapons. 5 minutes to activation, John announced. Remember, once we trigger the cascade, both sides will be reduced to primitive technology. The difference is that we know how to fight in the dark. Kate was running through her mental checklist one final time when the subway facility shook violently. Dust rained down from the ceiling as something heavy moved overhead. Tony, what was that? Captain Tony Garcia was at the perimeter observation post, peering through the darkness toward the surface. Alien heavy machinery. They're positioning something directly above us. Can they detect our device? I don't think so, but they're definitely suspicious about this area. The facility shook again as massive alien equipment settled into position. Overhead, through the ceiling, Kate could hear the distinct hum of alien power systems charging up. 2 minutes to activation, John announced. All teams stand by. Amy was making her own final preparations aboard New Horizon when Lisa Park grabbed her arm. Amy, look at this! She pointed to a primitive oscilloscope that was monitoring alien quantum frequencies. Their power levels are spiking across the entire solar system. They're activating their light grids early, Amy realized. They must have detected something. 1 minute to activation, John's voice came through the radio across the solar system. Alien installations began lighting up with power levels that dwarfed their previous output. Massive beams of artificial sunlight began projecting from every alien facility, creating zones of permanent daylight that stretched for thousands of kilometers. 30 seconds, John announced. Kate's hands were steady as she reached for the activation switch. Around her, the subway facility continued to shake as alien machinery operated directly overhead. If her calculations were wrong, or if the timing was off by even a few seconds, humanity's last gamble would fail. 10 seconds. Kate closed her eyes and thought about every human who was counting on this desperate plan to work. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, activate. Kate threw the switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the device began to hum with a sound unlike anything she had ever heard. The quantum resonance chamber glowed with an eerie light that seemed to bend reality around it. The sound grew louder and more complex, building toward something that felt like the universe itself was vibrating. Then the lights went out. Not just the lights in the facility, but every electronic device in the solar system. The alien machinery overhead went silent. The hum of life support systems stopped. Even the primitive radios that had been their lifeline went dead. For the first time in 8 days, the solar system was truly dark, and in that darkness Kate could hear something that made her smile despite everything. From somewhere above, muffled by concrete and steel, came the sound of alien screaming. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all crying out in terror as their worst nightmare became reality. The damn thing had worked.